What's your act like you belong story? My kids and I were in a touristy area of Mexico and there was this fancy resort that had access to the beach. We weren't part of the resort but they had really nice pools. We realized that the only things designating resort patrons were that they were all American and they had specific towels. Well, we were already American, and then we got some discarded towels. We spent 2 full days hanging out at the resort. At one point my daughter made friends with someone with a gold towel so she got to use that. The gold towel got her all the free soda she could drink. Always know where your towel is. Way back when I was 17, I was working a conference at MIT and came across a packed lecture hall. They were showing the World Cup, and the hall was full of people rooting for Brazil. So I sat down and started chanting for Brazil instant acceptance. They started giving me beers and I skipped work and got blasted cheering for a team I had no connection to in a sport I didn't care about all day. It was so much fun. And then Germany scores. While in high school, I went to Columbia University for some seminar on publishing. I was working on my school's art literary magazine, and our supervisor thought it would be a help for us. After the seminar, I was wandering around taking in the sights of this big, prestigious institution when I came across a different seminar. This one for Columbia law students. I would have kept walking, except this seminar included a free lunch, pizza, and I was hungry. So I walked into the seminar, took a seat, and pretended to be a law student at Columbia University. I listened to the speakers for a bit, chatted very briefly with some of the other attendees, got my pizza, and got the heck out of there. Free pizza is best pizza. Years ago I took a DSLR camera to a concert. When they told me I couldn't bring it in, I lied and said I was with the college newspaper and we were running a front page story on the venue and I needed pictures. I talked to the event coordinator and she asked the band and the next thing I knew, I had a press pass. That lie got me in the gap between the stage and security. I had no idea how to use that camera but I faked it. Then I handed off the badge and the camera to my friends and one by one they faked it. That was a great time. My job. On a rational level, I know that I'm good at it. I am successful, popular with co-workers and superiors, and people tell me they love my work on a regular basis. But still I have a serious case of imposter syndrome every other day. What am I doing here? I shouldn't be allowed to work here. I have no idea what I'm doing. Stop paying me for this and hire actual professionals. Walking to my bus on my way home from winter break I realized I had bought tickets for the wrong day. Don't ask how. After a brief call the company told me I couldn't do anything about it, and it was the last day I was allowed to be on campus. Realizing I was stuck I decided to just get on the bus anyway. The driver barely looked at my ticket before nodding me on. I immediately got on, sat next to a friend and went to sleep to avoid suspicion. When I woke up my friend told me they'd overbooked and some people had to wait on a second bus. After I got home I found out they'd left mine and a few others' bags behind so I had to call up again and negotiate having my bags sent for me and a few students who weren't fluent enough in English to negotiate for themselves. Luckily after multiple speech checks and no one asking for my info I made it home with all my stuff. And that's the story of how I stowed away on a bus. TDLR. No one ever questions a sleeping person on a bus. Being an artist manager it felt like I had to act like I belonged every single day when I was just starting out. Meetings, phone calls, emails, everything. It felt like I needed some sort of confidence and ouchiness I didn't think I had. Felt weird trying to be someone else at work every day. As someone getting into artist management now, I feel you. Especially because you are dealing with bands and promoters as well as label execs and publishers. Having to figure out which style to have in each situation is a bit daunting. When I got my first construction job, I had to go buy a bunch of gear, car hats, heavy work pants, steel toe boots, and a bunch of hand tools. The first thing I did when I got them home was take the pants out to the garage and drag them through the dirt on the floor, stomp on them, rub some oil on them and pull out a few threads. The steel toes got hit with a shovel and dirted up and the tools got their handles scraped and dirted. I showed up on site with 2 other new guys who looked like they were mannequins from the store. They got razzed for their shiny new gear and they thought I knew what I was doing. Dang, way to be prescient. When I was in Croatia, I wandered into an aquarium where a German school group, 16-18, were waiting for their teacher to pay them in. Was only 19 at the time, so just stood amongst them like an inconspicuous penguin, and once shuttled in by our tour guide flaked off to look at some turtles. When I was in college, parking was heck to find during football games, and often you had to park over a mile away. They also wouldn't let you near the stadium unless you were faculty or a cop. However, at the time we had construction going on and lots of people were driving large white trucks just like the truck I had. Seeing this, I took it upon myself to try my limits and try to get on campus without being stopped. 9 times out of 10 it worked, and I could park right outside of the stadium. You can go wherever you want if you have a clipboard, safety vest, and hard hat. Despite being 6'2", I am consistently good at blending into crowds to the point of being invisible pretty much without trying. I've accidentally walked into the wrong party before and stayed there for a few hours, when in reality I was invited to the one next door. Back in 2006 I went to Lollapalooza, and there was an after party that my favorite band was playing at. My friend and I didn't have tickets, so we just went up to the back door of the venue. I whispered to my friend, act as if like from the movie Boiler Room. He says okay and just follows my lead. So we follow a band member in saying hold the door please, and they did, thinking we worked there and we're just out for a smoke. We ended up walking up the stairs and watching the band on stage. No idea how we didn't get caught and kicked out, but that might have been one of the coolest things actors if ever got us. Ended up on the same flight home as the band after that too, coincidentally. I'm a massive, lifelong Star Wars fan, so when The Last Jedi premiered I leapt at the chance to go. The problem was it was on a weekday, and while I took a Ferris Bueller day, none of my friends did. Additionally, I had a migraine the morning of, so I ended up arriving quite late at the venue at 10 AM. I, still quite zonked out from the migraine and subsequent medication, was hustling towards the queue, occasionally asking workers if I was going in the right direction. They all confirmed I was and that it was just around the corner. Eventually I arrived at what I thought was the end of the queue. There were people sitting around in costume, so I settled in for the long wait. A few hours later it was time to move into the venue, and I'm stoked. I get up and eagerly follow the people in front of me, who I now realize are in wheelchairs, and are wearing Star Wars wristbands, and are actually first in the queue. I am not in a wheelchair, and I do not have a wristbands, but I am in the front of the queue. Crap. Thoughts of the IT crowd filled my head, and in an instant my anxiety kicked in. I could feel the panic attack rising in me as I trudged behind them, awaiting the order to go to the back of the queue, which at that point meant I probably wouldn't get in. I debated just booking it to the nearest alleyway to have my shame-induced panic attack in private when I noticed I was part of the group instead of behind them. I started panicking even more and tried to move, but to no avail. We had just passed through the gates, and I was officially in the premiere. I stood just inside the gates for a moment, debating whether I should just leave out of pure guilt when the group I pretended to be a part of speed past me cheering. No comments on how I was clearly not disabled. No one stopped me to check for a wristband. I don't know if that group hated me and was ignoring me, didn't care about one person cutting the queue, or were helping me. All I know is it was one of the greatest nights of my life, seeing some of my childhood heroes and experiencing the magic of Star Wars in a whole new way. All thanks to a group of disabled people that didn't rat me out. TLDR. Real life, I'm disabled. Not all disabilities are visible. I didn't really participate in any after school clubs besides playing a sport. One day they were taking club pics for the yearbook, so me and my buddy decided to just jump in every club pic they were taking. Ended up being in choir, band, advanced French, ultimate frisbee, and future teachers of America, to name a few. Would have been in the robotics club, but we got ratted out. Oh nice. Friend of mine did that. Princeton reunion. Lived in Princeton, NJ for a while. Everyone kept talking about the reunion. Apparently every year they throw a massive drinking party on campus. You need a wristband to get in, but there's plenty of old alums in the area that get them and don't want them. My brother's friend scored a couple, and with some careful passing back and forth we all managed to get in. This crap was nuts. Like, flash your wristband. Here's a free beer. They were tossing empty kegs into a mountain-sized pile like you might do with a can in a backyard BBQ. People were super drunk and friendly until you told them you were from Kansas and didn't go to Princeton. Then you were a pleb and very quickly dismissed. So frick it. Just started making crap up. Yeah boy. What are you in? Me? Eastern linguistics. Astronomics. Let's get another beer. I had more made up degrees that by the end of the night I was having trouble keeping them straight cause I'd keep running into people. Also peed in a lot of weird shady corners all over campus that night. Turns out people at Princeton aren't necessarily the smartest people in the world, but they sure are nice if they think you're part of the club. They do throw one heck of a party though. I landed a cushy GS11 position, and I still don't feel like I really know all of this stuff well enough to be here. I just act confident and pretend to know what's going on. I suspect everyone else is doing the same thing. This is government work, after all. Hey, as long as you act confident, that's good enough for government work. I was new to work when an office mate farted. We all laughed, then a second fart came in from another office mate. Me, as a new guy, tried to fart for laughs, but something else came out. What is it with Reddit and everyone crapping themselves or sharting? Last weekend, we got the train to London and jumped into the first open table in first class and enjoyed the free tea and Wi-Fi. Helps that the ticket guy didn't come around, but none of the staff cared enough to say anything. LOL. I did this last week. The guy inspected my ticket and told me to get lost. I started at my current employer about 15 years ago. The manager of my department was pisspoor with no management experience. I filled the gaps to make do. One day, he just announced he was going to focus on other tasks. Nobody thought to actually designate a new manager. So one day I just started doing all management tasks. Another day sometime later, I just started putting manager on my business cards and email tags. Nobody questioned it. A couple of years later, after I had started seeing the need for better global coordination, I just started using global manager as my title. Nobody questioned it. A couple of years ago I upgraded to global directory of. Raises followed suit and nobody ever said no, you're not. And that's how I became a director in a global enterprise software company. I want to believe this. Was taking some pictures in a city when I stumbled upon an outdoor fashion show which was free to visit but had an area in front of the runway for photographers. So with my not so professional looking gear I went into that area, not knowing it was meant for real professionals who had signed up for it beforehand. I still do not know how I got in there without anyone noticing. Maybe it was because I was there very early and the organization was not up to speed yet. Other amateur photographers that tried to get in were turned away. I had crap gear, wrong lens for it and everything, but no one questioned my presence. Had a blast trying out runway photography in that pretty crowded area. Must have looked like I belonged there because I was not kicked out. You probably seriously underestimate what non-photographers consider professional gear. When I was studying abroad in Costa Rica, my friend who was a rugby player back in the States wanted to go to this rugby practice he randomly found out about while talking to a guy who was on this team. Next thing I know, my skinny white butt was being hauled along so he didn't have to go alone. I am then in a legit club rugby practice that's all in Spanish. I barely speak any at this point, and trying to do my best to fit in with all these hulking, terrifying looking rugby players. Luckily I have participated in my fair share of sports practices growing up, so I was able to figure out what the drills were just by watching them, so was able to run through practice kinda like I knew what I was doing. Eventually I was paired up with the huge beast to do tackling drills. I think he may have figured out my ruse, so took it easy on me and taught me some basics. He was really cool. Went on to find out afterwards that this was a team playing in the Latin American club rugby, or something like that, championships, and that player was the best rugby player in Latin America. Go figure. Pre-TLDR, I accidentally became part of a software initiative, with all of the awards and accolades that went with it, yet I had never heard of the product in question. Story: I moved to Columbus, Ohio in 2006 to start a new IT contract job for a fairly large company. I had been there for exactly 2 weeks when a woman walked up to my cubicle and popped her head in. "Hey, the lunch is starting. We should head in," she said. giving me the thumbs up and obviously expecting me to follow her. I had no clue who this woman was, what this lunch was, but I was new in town and knew no one. I was happy to head to a lunch with other people. We walked to a large conference room that was filled with chairs facing a podium, tables full of yummies, and a ton of people. So I just got in line and grabbed some food. I knew no one there, but it quickly became clear that a lot of the people there were strangers to each other and were from different departments. Handshakes and introductions were going around, and I just went with the flow. I introduced myself, said I was a contractor, learned this was a good catch-all for not specifying what department you worked in, and filled my plate with some great food. I sat down in one of the chairs, and for the next hour, I listened to people talk about the new product and how we had all worked so hard to implement it, how we all did such a great job and how the upper management was extremely proud of us. In the end, they had us get together for a large group photograph. I was right in the front, dead center. Afterward, there was a sign-in sheet that asked for our name and our supervisor. I filled it out, grabbed some food to go, and headed out. Over the next few months I received updates in my email about the project. I received an award that was delivered to my cube. I received a couple certificates for accomplishments I had never accomplished and was invited to a dinner a year later for the anniversary of the launch. I did not attend. It turns out that when I was brought on board to do my job, the department I was connected to didn't have any room and I had to sit in a cube belonging to another department. It was assumed that I belonged to that department by others, and no one ever questioned it. My favorite part of the whole thing is that the group photo was blown up and hung in the main lobby with other group photos. So I will forever be a part of a group I was never a part of, and dang proud of it. I was at the South by Southwest Gaming Expo in Austin, Texas. There was an area full of badass gaming computers and I saw other people casually playing. When a computer opened up, I sat down and soon a game of PUBG began. It turns out it was a tournament and I had taken someone's seat. People crowding around to watch over our shoulders and an announcer started talking. I'd never even played the game before. My station in life. By that, I mean that I am in my 20s and am college educated. I have a full-time job in healthcare. I am an officer in the military. I own a home and have a wife and kids. But given that I'm so young and by all intents and purposes, still feel young, I have a hard time feeling like I am the adult in the room. In almost all aspects of life I feel like I'm pulling off a clever ruse, like I'll soon be discovered as 3 infants in a trench coat and sent back to finish my youth before actually being trusted with adult things. I help out with my kids' Boy Scout troop all the time and it's really weird when the other kids come up to me for help like I should know how to be an adult. So for our OTC, once a year they take us over to the local military base for FTX, field training exercise. We defend a fake military free on board base for like 26 hours from Marines posing as villagers and enemies. The first few times I'd keep getting killed, but noticed that a bunch of the Marines had balaclavas face masks during the exercise. So this year, I took my own. Even though I was obviously not one of them, the mask made them think once or twice before the shot, blanks OFC, at me, so I got out of at least 3 deaths on patrol. Sneak 100. When I visited India in 2013, we went to the Taj Mahal. Now at the time they had 2 rates to get in, a cheap rate for Indians and a pricier rate for foreigners. I think it equated to like 20p for Indians and £7 for foreigners. They could normally spot who was a foreigner by their clothing, way of speaking etc, and they also had checks so they'd make them pay the higher rate. I was with my mum, dad and brother. They had lines separated by gender so I went with my mum and dad and bro went together. My dad wanted us to get in on the lower rate if we could because he wanted to save money or WE. Now, my mum is originally from India herself so she knows how to fit in and got me and herself in and paid the lower rate. My dad wasn't so successful. Me, him and my bro are not originally from India though our parents' grandparents are, and he and my bro paid the higher rate. We got to the front of the Taj Mahal and realized there were 2 queues to get in. One for those who had paid the lower rate to get in. The queue was maybe 3 hours long and at 4 PM or so at this point, Then there was a shorter queue for those who had paid the higher rate, which was maybe 15-20 minutes long tops. We had 2 lower rate tickets and 2 higher rate tickets between the 4 of us, and they are quite distinctive in color. My dad decided he wanted us to all try get in together on his and my brother's tickets. There was a security guy yelling at a guy in front of us who was trying to jump into the shorter queue on lower rate tickets. So my dad waved the 2 higher rate tickets he had in front of the security guy, who at that point said something along the lines of, "Look at these higher rate tickets. This is what you need to get into the shorter queue," and he started waving us through, so we took that as a cue to get into the shorter queue. Had a blast of a time. When I was in grade 12, I had a spare, no class, in the time slot when our school normally had assemblies. For this particular one, they made everyone go, even the people who had a spare. I couldn't find anywhere to sit, so I sat with a random class. Turns out the class was a grade 9 class. After the assembly, they dismissed by grade, lowest to highest. When the class I was with got up to leave, I did too. Nobody noticed, not even the class I was with. When I read grade 12, I expected buying alcohol. 2 upper 20s white men ended up at an Asian frat party. My friend and I made a trip out to California as we were groomsmen in our high school buddy's wedding. We stayed a few extra days and decided to see San Francisco. My friend is a bartender and wanted to hit all the nice establishments San Fran had to offer. After a whole day of drinking and vomiting into potted plants, we decided we should catch an Uber pool back to our hotel. Well, we passed out on the way back, and when the car stopped to let someone else out, we instinctively just got out. The driver pulled off and we realized we had no clue where we were at. While we searched our phones, we kept seeing people walk up to this giant house, punch in a code, open the door which would release a wave of party music, and head in. My friend decided we are going. He waits for someone to start walking up and he takes off across the street. As he opened the door to get in, he makes it just in time to catch the door and call me across to come in. Once inside, we knew fricked up. We were 2 white guys as a sea of Asian people. This was an Asian fraternity from Berkeley. Not only that, but we looked way older. As we came in, they were toasting the party to a frat brother that the party was in honor of for going to a Habitat for Humanity trip. So we used that as a backstory of how we knew this guy from that. Needless to say, we continued to drink their free booze and play beer pong. As we started to feel more and more out of place, we decided we should make our leave. My friend, who is not one to leave without making a mark, decided we couldn't just leave. He grabbed a champagne bottle, shook the crap out of it, then showered that sea of Asian children in crap champagne. Everyone went crazy and started cheering, and we made our escape. Went to a friend's father's funeral years ago with my partner. After the church service, there was a graveside service. The graveyard was located about 30 minutes away, just outside of town, on a road that had a series of graveyards, different denominations. We saw them getting ready for the graveside service as we parked and managed to join everyone just in time for the start. It did not take long to realize that we were in the wrong graveyard and we had no idea who any of the people were, including the deceased. We couldn't walk away at that point without drawing attention, so we stood there with all of these people dabbing our eyes with tissue, pretending that we were sharing everyone's grief. The worst part was that we could see the correct graveside service happening in the next graveyard over. I know I shouldn't be laughing, but one day I forgot that a marathon was taking place downtown that passed right in front my workplace. Therefore, I couldn't park anywhere remotely close to work. I also happened to be in trouble for being late a few times in a row. I had to be at work on time. I found the first open parking spot and started hoofing it to work, maybe 4-5 blocks away. With less than a block left, the horde of runners rounded the corner and completely blocked my path to the door on the other side of the street. They were all running in the direction I had to walk, so I hopped the fence and started running with them, making my way to the other side of the street without getting in anyone's way. Made it on time. I was on a college trip as part of the school, and in our hotel, I could see a big breakfast banquet sort of thing. As I got closer, I could see that it was for a medical conference that was going on. But since I was going to academic talks after this, I was already in office attire, so I was dressed like everyone else other than looking younger. So I just calmly went over and got food, went into this big conference room with lots of tables and people sitting and talking about medicine and ate. Then I left without speaking to anyone. My parents are atheist and religion never really came up even as a topic. Then I went to camp. They asked us what religion we were. I didn't know. I said the one religion I could name and it was the worst possible religion I could have picked. Catholic. One other girl was Catholic and let me know this meant she and I would be best friend until the end of days. Now it's Sunday and I have to know all the rituals and verbal replies and sitting and kneeling and getting up to get in line to have a strange man put a disc in my mouth and act like that's even remotely okay because otherwise it's a betrayal to my best friend until the end of times that I just found out I had. Camp. What religion you are. Oh crap. I was at Sundance Film Festival outside of a concert venue and I saw a certain celebrity who I was a big fan of standing outside, so I went up and chatted with them for a couple minutes. I noticed the security at the club was glancing over at us talking. There was a huge line to get in and the concert was sold out. The certain celebrity said it was nice talking to me and headed toward the concert entrance with his girlfriend. I casually followed him toward the door without him even realizing, and the security guard thought I was with him and ushered me into the sold out show. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.